Good morning. We will pay attention to the reconciliation of the control accounts with the list. So we will take into account what is the balance in the debtors control account at the end of the month, 4653. What is the total of the debtors list, 4175. So that tells me immediately that there's some mistakes because your debtors control balance should always be equal to your debtors list, because all the individual entries that we've done in the journals were posted to the individual accounts in the debtors ledger that is included in this debtors list. The debtors list is a summary of all the balances in your debtors ledger. The totals of every column of the debtors control column in all the subsidiary journals are posted to the debtors control account. Therefore, those two should always be the same. The same result will apply to the creditors control account that has a balance of 5894 and the creditors list that have a balance of 6092. That's also an indication that there's a mistake somewhere. We will open the debtors control column and show that there's a balance of 4653. In the debtors list, the balance is 5175. Creditors have credit balances, so in the creditors control, the balance is 5894, and in the creditors list, the balance is 6092. If we look at the additional information that's provided, they say that the total of the creditors column in the cash payments journal was overcast by 200. That means they added up 200 too much in that total. Now, first of all, determine whether the mistake was made in the control account or whether the mistake was made in the creditors ledger. The total of a column will go to the creditors control. The individual entries in the cash payments journal were correct, so there's no mistake in the creditors list. This error will only be corrected in the creditors control account. Then secondly, we decide on which side did we put the correct entry when we posted it from the cash payments journal. We credited the bank and we debited the creditors control account. So we put that amount on the debit side of the creditors control. Now we decide, did we put too much or too little? They say it was overcast, so it means this figure that we put on the debit side was too much. Therefore, I will correct it on the credit side with 200 rand. The balance of 198 was omitted from the creditors list. So all the entries in the account was correct. It was only when we transferred the balances from the creditors ledger to the creditors list that we omitted a balance of 198 of a creditor. So it means in this list we have to show that it must increase with 198. The balance of 75 in S. Snow's account was recorded twice in the debtors list. There was no mistake in the debtors control, so there's no mistake in the control account. When we posted it to the debtors personal account, we showed it twice in the list, so therefore it was recorded twice on the debit side, and we will have to take out one figure on the credit side to reduce the 75 that was written down twice. A receipt issued to a debtor for 180 Rand in settlement of his account of 200 was recorded in the debtors column in the cash receipts journal as 180 and posted accordingly. So there was no mistake when this entry was recorded in the cash receipts journal, and there was no mistake when it was posted from the journal to the debtors control account and to the debtors individual account. But no entry was made for the settlement discount. So that means we have to do an additional entry for the settlement discount of 20. So if I take the 200 minus the 180, it gives me a discount of 20 Rand. I will have to reduce my debtors control with 20, and I must reduce my debtors list to show that the amount will reduce with 20 Rand. The total of the debtors journal was added up by 310 too little. There was no mistake in the debtors journal, so there's no mistake in the individual account of the person. Because it was added up too little, it means that we transferred too little to the debtors control account. The debtors journal is when we sell goods, so we will increase the debtors on the debit side. So on the debit side of the debtors control, the figure that we recorded here was not big enough, and we have to show that this debtors control must increase with 310 Rand. A credit invoice for 180 that was issued has not been recorded. It has not been recorded at all. That means you have to record it in both the debtors list and in the debtors control. When we issue an invoice, it means the debtor bought goods from us and he owes more money. So I will increase my debtors control account and I will increase the individual account of the debtor. Therefore, the debtors list will increase. A credit invoice for 42 for goods purchased from Brown dealers was treated as a credit note. Now we bought goods from Brown dealers. That means we are dealing with creditors. It was treated as a credit note, so it was recorded in the wrong account journal. If we treat it as a credit note, it was recorded in the creditors allowances journal. So that means in our creditors control, we showed an amount on the debit side of the creditors control account, and we showed an amount in the creditors list on the debit side. Those figures were actually supposed to be on the credit side because the credit invoice is when we buy goods. So first of all, we have to go and credit the creditors control and the list with 42 Rand to reduce these figures that was incorrectly recorded on the debit side. Then we have to go and show that the creditors and the individual account of the creditors must increase on the credit side. So if an amount was put on the wrong side of the accounts, we will record it double to correct the mistake first of all, and then to do the original entry that was supposed to be done. A dishonored check of 140 was recorded in the creditors column in the cash payments journal and was posted accordingly. The amount was correctly posted to the debtors account, so there's no mistake in the debtors list. What happens with a dishonored check? That is a check that we received from a debtor, originally recorded in the cash receipts journal. If that check is dishonored, we have to cancel it in the cash payments journal. This check should be recorded in the debtors control column. This was incorrectly recorded in the creditors control column, so therefore it was posted to the creditors control account. Now, if it is posted from the cash payments journal, the bank was credited and the creditors control account was debited with 140. So to correct this mistake, I must credit the creditors control account because this figure was not supposed to be in the creditors control. Then this 140 was supposed to go into the debtors control to show that the debtors owe the money. This was not done now. Now we have to record this 140 Rand on the debit side of the debtors control account to indicate that the debtors control must increase with 140 that we never recorded in that account. If we look at number 9, an entry for 56 in the creditor's journal, so that's when we bought goods, was posted twice to the creditor's personal account. There's no mistake in the journal, so there's no mistake in the creditor's control. If we buy goods and it comes from the creditor's journal, it means that we recorded it twice in the person's account on the credit side. I just want the figure once on the credit side, so to correct this mistake, I will debit my creditors list with 56 Rand. A credit invoice that was issued for 199 to A. Nell was correctly recorded in the debtor's journal. So there's no mistake in the journal, therefore there's no mistake in the control account. The amount was posted to the debtor's account as 196 Rand. That means that we put the wrong figure in the debtor's account. A credit invoice or the debtor's journal means that we sold goods to a debtor, so their account was supposed to be debited. Okay, we put the figure on the debit side, but we put the wrong figure on the debit side. So instead of 199, we only showed 196 on the debit side. Therefore, we must add another 3 Rand on the debit side to get the correct figure in the individual account of Nell that was supposed to be there. Then I will go and add up all these totals in the debtor's control, debit side, credit side, debtor's list, debit, credit, creditor's control, credit, creditor's list, debit, credit. And if I compare this with each other, the totals must give me the same balances. So in the debtor's control on the debit side, there's 5283 and on the credit side 20. So if I subtract it from each other, I get a balance of 5263. In the debtor's list, we've got 5358 minus the 95, and it also gives me the 5263. In the creditor's control, we only have a figure of 6318. In the creditor's list, it is 6374 minus the 56, and it will then also give me 6318. So if I look at this, I can see that I corrected all the mistakes that I know of because they are equal. What did we learn today? Any omitted or incorrect entries in the subsidiary journal will be corrected in the control account and in the list. So if we didn't record an entry in the subsidiary journal, or we made a mistake when we recorded the entry in the subsidiary journal, the wrong entry will be transferred to the individual account of the debtor or creditor. The total will be wrong, and that wrong total will be taken to the control account. Therefore, we have to correct it in both places. If there's an incorrect total on the control account in the subsidiary journal, it means there was no mistake in the journal, so there's no mistake in the list. You will just have to correct it in the control account because the wrong total was taken to the control account. If there's a mistake in the individual account, then it will only be recorded on the list. When you have to reconcile the debtors list with the debtors control or the creditors list with the creditors control, the first step is to determine whether the mistake was made in the list or whether the mistake was made in the control account, so that I can determine, must I correct the mistake either in the list or in the control account, or both places. Then I must determine whether this mistake was made on the debit side or the credit side, so that I can determine on this side that we've put the entry, whether it was too small, then the correction must be done on the same side. If the amount was too high, the correction will be made on the opposite side of the ledger.